this thing here, you're good.
Welcome to Speak Sex. I'm your host, Eurydice. I'm a writer and an artist on female sexuality from the island of Lesbos, where the lesbians come from, or at least their name comes from. And I started this podcast because the fact that I was lesbian kind of made me aware of the power of names, especially in sexuality, and how arbitrary they are as they have been passed on to us. And it affected my own sense of identity from day one, basically. As soon as I understood that everybody else I went to school was not a born lesbian, and I went into that kind of like confusion and self-hatred and, effort to survive the power of the language over us. So all the stuff that was forbidden and perverted was visited on my consciousness early. And what I've come out of it with is the absolute certainty that if we have free language and confidence and ease, talking about ourselves to each other in private, in public, without any judgment, we will enter a much happier world for ourselves and for everyone. So I want to encourage all of you listening out there to speak sex, especially before you have sex. And by sex, I don't just simply mean the sexual act. How long do you want to do it for? Who wants to be on top? No, like your entire sexual consciousness, identity, gender, dreams, fantasies, fluidity, past, future, trauma, reclaiming the trauma, all of it. Just say it without fear of judgment. And do not let others speak for you, especially not the dominant, hetero-dominant culture. So thank you for listening. Thank you for joining me on this journey of overcoming the dichotomy of ourselves, the dichotomy between our minds and our bodies. Thank you for trusting me as your sex whisperer here on Jolt Radio. My guest today is Elizabeth, but she's known as Virgo. And she's a sound and video game design expert. She is DJing tonight at Project Art's annual benefit at the Moore Building in the Design District. So I hope that our listeners are interested in attending that. They can hear her in action. Project Art is a national nonprofit that empowers youth, emerging artists, and communities through partnerships with public libraries. Yay for libraries! Project Art's resident artists teach tuition-free after-school visual art classes to children in under-resourced areas, and they're also using the time to develop new artwork in the library. So it was founded in Harlem in 2011, and today Miami is one of 6 Project Art cities. Since 2016, Project Art has partnered with the Miami-Dade Public Library System, which we love, to provide hundreds of children free art classes in its 8 locations in South Florida. So this is wonderful. Thank you for coming, Virgo.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start by asking you about your name. Are you a Virgo?
Yes, I know it's a common question, but yes,
Right.
I am a Virgo.
Good.
Very much one.
Very much one. Well, I'm a Pisces, which is like the exact opposite on the spectrum.
This is true.
So, what do you think about the Virgo sexuality? And I have opinions of my own. I definitely have loved Virgos.
I mean, I think everyone has their different idea of Virgos, but I mean, we tend to be pretty secretive, but very much passionate. But it's all very closed up. But if you're lucky enough to be with one of us, it's yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. But I agree. It's much more in the doing than in the talking. So what I was just saying. The speaking sex very difficult for Virgo. But the doing sex, easy.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, pretty extraordinary. And I think that may come from both a greater than average respect for public opinion, you know, and a kind of like, you know, love of perfection. So, you know, there is no perfectionism. There is not even a standard or a way of defining, you know, perfection in like talking about stuff, especially your own shit. So the Virgos tend to avoid it.
Yeah, I think in a way we're unsure, like,
It's too
unless
gray
you
area.
practice what you want to say before, like, just to like openly say something, it's very like that's something you'll never do because you want it to be perfect, the performance or however you say something.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
it's very
So
shy.
you just come in here and you're on the high. It's a high wire act.
Yeah.
Exciting. Okay, so tell me a little bit about your work and how you came to it. How you found your path.
Yeah, I mean, I started off with filmmaking, and from there, everything I've done since has been a form of filmmaking. Now I'm doing video game design, and I'm making music.
So you went to college for filmmaking?
Yeah, I studied film, and then I started making music.
And you did like a thesis, so you did do some short films.
Exactly, I did a lot of short films and
documentaries, or
you know, I wanted to do documentaries, but I haven't done that yet. It's something I'm still thinking about. But yeah, I did a lot of film stuff while I was living in California, in Los Angeles, and then I moved
animated or
no, live action,
okay.
like music videos, short films. Some worked on like a Western TV series for a bit, but lots of different stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then I moved to Miami by chance, and
By chance? For love?
For love, but actually for work, and I ended up staying here, and I started making music instead of working on film.
Which makes sense in Miami.
Yeah.
Because music industry here is bigger for sure.
Yeah, and more just, I'm a very independent person, like with any sort of craft I do, like I like to do all of it. So with film, like there's so much you can do, but then you have to bring in a team.
For sure.
But music's a very individualistic thing where you can really do it all by your own. So that's kind of where I started focusing on that, and yeah.
So what do you do in your current discipline, in your current art practice? What exactly do you do?
Day to day, I have a studio where I write music, so I'm there in my studio, like playing with synths and mostly on the computer and just making songs, like pretty heavy club techno-y tracks now. But yeah, I went to Georgia, like to Tbilisi, Georgia, this past January, and I went to a club there. It's called Kitty, and it is the ultimate like rave scene, like dark, heavy techno that you'll ever experience in the world. Like,
how interesting!
Like everyone that goes there says it's like what Berlin was in the 90s, and I don't know. Since then, like my whole music and everything I'm thinking about has shifted completely, and I finally found a sound that I really like. So I've been writing a lot of new music.
I love it.
Yeah.
Did you bring any?
Ooh.
We may have to play a little bit.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah. I have a private link.
Okay, good. Yeah. So we'll do that. And I love that you found your sound in Tbilisi. I'm just gonna say that because it's so exotic. I have family there. I've never visited them, but you know, like the Greek diaspora, they went there and stayed.
Yeah.
So, but it's very rarely that I hear the place mentioned, you know, in our art practice amongst us. So I think that's really...
Yeah, it blew my mind, just like the country itself and the people, like they're really all about like hospitality there. So like we went to some amazing meals, and I had never had Georgian food, and now like
you're looking for it.
I can't believe it. Like it's so amazing. Like it's like some of the best food I've had in my life. But
yeah, because it's so authentic. It's like closer to the
Like it reminds me of a lot of different cuisines. Like you have a mezza type thing, but then it's still it's so unique. But I love it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know.
Yeah. I love it too for the same reason. It just feels much more real. It's like amazing. The taste of everything.
So savory.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's salty and like I don't know. I love it.
And it feels like pre-refrigeration. You know how like some food feels like even if you don't have electricity, it will taste the same.
Right, like a lot of pickled things.
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
preserved.
which is really cool. I think, yeah, yeah. So, do you do visual work for your beats, or you
Yeah, so
have given up on? Okay.
a year ago I developed a video game and I put that out on Steam. It's called Water Planet, and
Water
now,
Planet.
Yeah, Water Planet.
Nice.
Now, my partner and I were working on a new video game. It's a multiplayer online VR shooter.
It's called Shooter?
No, it's called Shifted.
Okay.
It's a genre of shooter
Gotcha.
multiplayer.
Okay.
So yeah, mostly on the previous game, I did all of like the visual aesthetic of it.
Nice.
And on this one, I will be more involved soon. We're just getting like the framework of the game.
Okay, so it's super early stage.
Yeah.
And how do you? Does that work? I mean, does that work fulfill you? How does that work fulfill you as a woman artist? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I've always really enjoyed like really tedious like work where I'm just like in the computer doing something. Like I used to do a lot of editing for film, so like I have the patience to do that sort of work. And same with like video game design, it's the same thing. You're sitting in front of a computer and you have all like your pieces, like your 3D models and everything that you're arranging in a scene. That's just something I've always really loved to do. Is that
and what about the archetypal? You know, because my limited exposure is that a lot of it, you know, taps into our archetypal connections. You know, from like mythology, from all, you know, from like the beginning of what we call civilization, right? Like just the start. Those types, and we all want to embody or feel, you know, how it is to be one of them, you know, whether it's like the Titans. I mean, the names don't matter. It's that super, you know, superhumanness of it.
Yeah, I mean, you have this whole world that you're molding, so you have like
so for you, it has to be, you know, a great creative high.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
Very much. Like I'll spend hours like without sleep or food, just focused on that work, and
right, I can see that.
the rest of the world disappears.
Yeah, disappears. Yeah.
Yeah, entirely.
Nice. And do these characters have a sex life?
Ooh. Well, at this time, I haven't done any games that have like. The last game had a cybernetic organism, so I don't know about their sex life.
Yeah.
But, the next one, it's more just the actual gameplay. There's not a lot of like background story, but I don't know. The characters themselves, like they're pretty. Some of them, like they're contractors that go out and do work, so they seem like they might be kind of lonely, actually.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have found it. Yeah, because I mean, it's a space where, you know, people who are into games spend a long time.
Oh, but if we're talking about games that have like romance and stuff, there's one game that's like my favorite where you get to romance and
Which
there's
one is
sex
that?
and everything. It's called Dragon Age Inquisition. It's so good.
Yeah.
I love it because you get to like it's so fun.
And you get to do what?
Yeah, you have all these different characters and they all have like different things they like, and so you have like you get to romance.
Right.
Yeah.
In any, I mean, you can, and you also get to try all kinds of identities.
You do.
Right.
You do.
Virtual identities.
Yeah, because there's different, like there's orcs or elves, humans, and they all I don't know, explore.
Right, differently. And do you think that after playing that in some way affects your real life sexuality, or not at all?
I wonder if it did. I mean, honestly, I sort of fell in love with this video character, like, very intensely. Like, it was so intense. And, like, in the game, it's very tragic, where they break up with you, and they end up, like, betraying your whole, like everyone in the whole game. And I felt that. Like, it felt like a real breakup.
Very real, right.
Yeah, very real. But also, there's one specific elf that I romanced. His name is Solus. He, there's no, like, actual cutscene where you, like, have, like, sex or whatever.
Or climax.
Like, the other characters have that, but this particular one, it's very innocent in a way. But there's a lot of people in the forums that talk about whether you did have sex and it wasn't like, and if it was implied. But I think the story kind of says that you don't, because he didn't feel right about that because he knew he was going to betray you. So you'd actually never have sex with him. But it's such an intense like romance. Like, I don't know.
Well, because romance is all about the mind, right? It's like the mind stuff. Yeah. So and that's what the mating dance is. It's not about, you know, the kind of like climax is so short compared to the, you know, romancing.
Yeah, everything leading up to it.
Right. And the way it builds up, you know, the kind of like rise in action, and the conflicts and the risks involved and the stakes. But I have like 3 questions at once, so I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try because if you know. So okay, a tiny comment before my questions. You know, the Color of Water, was it that film where she fell in love with?
The Shape of Water, yes.
Yeah, The Shape of Water. Yeah,
I love that.
I loved it so much, and I felt that there was something virtual about it. The whole experience, you know, as if they were in a game, that they could be in, you know, in another. Well, they were in another reality. So when they finally had sex, I really wanted to see how that worked.
I think we all did.
I know. It's like, it was amazing until they're in the water, there's like this explosion, they, you know, in a way transmogrify and, you know, they enter the ocean and become, you know, fish. But how did it work anatomically? And we didn't go there, and it could be that it's Hollywood.
She showed us.
Right, she said it opened.
Yes.
Right. And what came out? Or how?
We don't know what came out.
Yeah.
What came out.
We don't know, right. So I feel that there is a little bit of like self-censorship also in the game world, and of course, you know, in movies, where the whole sci-fi experience of sexual connection, you know, physical sexual connection, not metaphorical, suddenly disappears. And I always crave more of it. You know, I want to know like the nuts and bolts, because if I do, if I can fantasize it, if I can visualize it, I feel like I can get there. That I will get there. You know, that I'll be able to, let's say, practically, in practical terms, masturbate to it if I know how it's done. But it's very hard to, like, I want to fantasize about it with myself, but then at the moment when I would be rising into, let's say, orgasm, I get stuck as to what exactly happens. I mean, I can overcome it with just pure fantasy and get there, but it would be nice to have the plumbing. I mean, the whatever, you know, inter-reality plumbing worked out.
Sure.
So, you know, from, if you're designing something, I'm throwing that out there.
Make sure all the parts are there.
Right, make sure the parts are there. So like the fantasy is complete. You know, you can fully experience it. And then, you know, I have found that people, that like girlfriends and boyfriends, but mostly girlfriends of people playing the game for long hours, have real life jealousy of the experiences with other players in the game world, which I find, you know, really interesting, because the jealousy is real.
Yeah.
And the partner may not even participate in the game at all. It doesn't matter, right? What do you think about that? How does one?
It's an interesting thing, because in some ways I think the virtual world is almost as real as the real world.
Oh yeah, it's becoming more and more real.
I think that we could be in a form of VR. I think we are in VR right now. So whether it's virtual or, you know, this flesh experience that we're in, I think that jealousy is valid. But I mean, it depends. You can choose just not to be a jealous person.
Oh, of course, yeah. But is it it's not really so much. It's not simply, you know, jealousy about you spend more time there than here.
Right. I mean, that's the thing about virtual worlds. Like it's very immersive. Like,
it's very immersive.
You can lose sense of time.
Right. And it's also very abstract.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how do you feel? Who is there? Yeah, is your heart involved, or is it just like distraction and entertainment? Like, where does the passive, more or less passive, because you're doing stuff, but more or less passive, let's say, entertainment and like the personal involvement, on the like emotional level begin? And it's a very thin line that cannot really be drawn because it keeps shifting. The more time you spend, the more you get invested. So yeah, I think that there is definitely a tension between the real world and the virtual world that will intensify as we go more virtual. And you know more about this than me, and I would like to hear your point of view, but I feel I agree with you that we're all going virtual. We're going our world. I don't want to say all of us, like on a personal level, like maybe not the ladies out in Little Haiti, or so it's not like so much personal because there are many people who have not experienced it at all. But I feel that as a whole, we're going to live on the internet more and more and more, and that's virtual life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely open to us being more intertwined with the virtual world, and I mean, I don't know. I have friends that like they treat their online relationships like they're not real, but I've always felt that those relationships are real, even if you don't know who's behind the screen. Like, that's a person, or if it is a bot, it's a robot. But I think all of those interactions are still valid, and I think we need to take it serious in the sense that it's okay to like really feel things, or I don't know, fall in love with a video game character if you want. I think that's a real emotion. I don't think
and learn from that experience and change.
Yeah.
Right. The same way that you would learn and change from a real, life experience and get hurt, as you mentioned, beautifully. That it's okay to it's normal to feel disappointment, betrayal, virtually, and I mean, for me, and again, it's just how I see it. I think that it's more interesting to live, full on virtually as much as you can, and enjoying it, and then like full on real world, like in nature, like old in real world, and find that balance instead of this nefarious, ill-defined kind of like life with your iPhone that we all seem to have. That's not in our control. It's just like in the control of our responses to what we're being given by like big tech and corporate, mega corporations.
There should be a divide there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I would like to see more sort of like interactive experiences, like virtual worlds that you can visit that are I don't know, that really play on like the real human experience too, because I think there's going to be a point where AI and robots and stuff like are definitely more a part of like our world. And
oh yeah, it's unstoppable.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to that time, and I don't know, having friends that are robots. I'm excited about that.
So what, do you know anything about virtual porn?
I had a feeling you'd ask me about this. A lot of people ask me this, but I haven't tried it. I'm curious because, I mean, my hesitation is because the graphics in VR right now are not amazing. I mean, I guess for VR porn, they can just do like a 3D camera and do live action. And that's
what they do.
A lot of times I think that, and then also sometimes it's probably animated. But I don't know.
They don't want to spend the time and the money.
Maybe, but it's more just, I don't know if I would feel nauseous in that sort of experience, because VR it's very intense, and like a lot of experience can make me feel personally like pretty nauseous. It's like, I don't know if I'd be that obsessed with like being nauseous and like watching that, but I am curious to see a really well done VR porn. I think that would be really kind of exciting.
Yeah, I think it would, and it would be kind of like a safe way for people to learn sexually,
That's
open
true,
up their
yeah.
horizons, not be repressed, not be
Definitely.
afraid, because we don't judge virtual, right? So like in the virtual world, you can go around killing everybody and no one says, oh my God, you have like terrorist, repressed, whatever, homicidal tendencies. We don't. So because of how at least the dominant culture sees virtual life, which is harmless more or less, unless you like have an addiction or something, it's harmless. It's just so it's not suspicious of virtual activity. So that way it's a wonderful place for sexuality and erotic experience to be explored,
Yeah, I
and
think that's really important, and also just the fact that there is a strong correlation between acts of violence and sexual repression. So I think having these sort of like sexual experiences virtually for people and that being open, it could be good for a lot of people.
exactly. Yeah, it could like turn us around, like get us away from the repression we started with, and also like nudity, have expose us to like nudity is something not necessarily sexual. Just it's okay, to have like naked experience of a world. All the things that we fear now are like shameful or perverted, but are not necessarily,
Of course, yes.
right? So in the virtual world, we can let go of those prejudices because we can have an experience, semi-real, semi-simulated. Because again, the experience on your mind is real. It's kind of like arrived to through simulation, but the experience and its result on your like neural composition is real. So I think it would be a great sexual like ed and sexual lib aid and portal.
Yeah,
More
definitely.
than aid, portal is
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, and then like now with like hab suits, like or yeah, you could feel all the sensations as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So how do we get this out to the people?
Right? I mean,
tomorrow.
I'm sure the industry is doing all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they're working on it.
Well, that would like change it will change everything. I mean, if that actually happens and becomes mainstream, it will undo 2,500 years of like extreme sexual repression, through the church.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be nice. So if for no other reason, for me personally, for no other reason, that's like a very good reason to welcome the virtual change. The change,
openness.
right? The openness, exactly, and the lack of prejudice.
Yes.
It's great to enter a world where you do not have a pre-taught prejudice about the way that we have about so much in the real world, depending on where we come from, where who raised us, whatever microculture we get stuck with in the beginning. Yeah. So where are you from?
I'm from California. I grew up in the Mojave Desert.
Oh, nice. Oh, how photogenic.
It's beautiful, actually. I love it.
It is, yeah. So that makes sense also. Kind of like going inward and upward when you're surrounded by desert, right? Yeah, that makes sense. So, and you do more events in Miami?
Yeah, I've been DJing a lot lately, focusing mostly on that aspect.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, not doing as much live performance anymore, but yeah, DJing a lot. There's quite a few raves this month that I'm going to play at for like WMC and stuff, and just different shows, and eventually I'll be touring more, but I want to get the rest of my new music like finished.
And how do you experience that as a woman when you're there? Where do you go physically? Is it like an out-of-body kind of experience, or?
There's a lot of things. I mean, you're kind of like paying attention to a lot of things. Like, I mean, personally, like it's about music selection and playing the things that you love so that you're having fun.
Right.
But then you're also paying attention to how other people are reacting. But I don't know. I mean, I can't say I go anywhere, actually. I should try that out. But it's actually a pretty present thing because I'm there and I'm really focused on like the next track and like what's happening in that moment. So it's
well, it's a very male-dominated little industry, as you
it's
know.
very true. Yes.
So that's why I asked you. You know, I was specifically asking you as a woman, like, what do you do with your boobs or your do they disappear?
Right. I mean, honestly, I do find myself wanting to wear just a t-shirt because I don't want to like be sexualized
Identify
at all.
Yeah.
But that's a personal choice.
Oh, I think that's a beautiful choice.
Yeah, just
to take your body out of that creative
and
work.
it's really just about the music.
Right. Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. And it should be at some point, gender free and not at all about like the plate, that it's presented on.
Yeah.
But it's when you enter a male dominated industry, then the fact that you're a woman, tends to bring kind of like objectification, so you have to
the main thing
make
as
these
long
choices.
as I know how to plug in all my cables, no one bothers me.
And Virgo is not a girl name, which is good. It's very androgynous.
That's true.
Yeah.
I actually never considered that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Both in the sound, ending with an O, which is very common in male names in the South. But also anyone is a Virgo, boys and girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that helps. I mean, I think that's a good choice in that sense. Yeah. So, and where do you see yourself going with your creative practice? More in the music and less in the game design?
It's always going to be parallel. I think I'll always be using the digital form as well as the music. But at the time, I really just want to focus on DJing and playing a lot and going to Europe because like Europe is where everything's happening. And so my main goal right now is just to have good music that can be played at Berghain. So
great. Yeah, you gotta do that's the route. Yeah, that's how you just pay your dues. Well, but I'm excited because again, for me, you're like a role model in choosing these careers that are so male dominated, but not doing it from a place of self-objectification or like this is my abundant sexuality, which gets misunderstood. I mean, I think it's great to do it from a place of sexuality if you can assert that without misconception, without being co-opted, but so quickly the physical body in particular.
I've definitely from the beginning I've always made like actually like a pretty distinguished effort to not be sexual in my like image.
Right.
But I mean I don't feel comfortable, but I appreciate when people can be open that way.
Yeah, it's wonderful to celebrate your sexuality, always. But it's nice for a woman to find her power in the workplace also from the work, completely, regardless or irrespective of what she looks like without that physical posturing. And that doesn't mean that, again, if you embody like alternative female, archetypes, I think that's great. Right? It's just when you go into the cliche that then you lose. We all lose. We all lose something. We all lose some of our content. So just kind of like getting away from the stereotype is beautiful, and I think that's what you do. in everything that you're playing with and working with. You're definitely, saying no to the stereotype. So, way to go.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I think the one of the best things about DJing is it really is just about being yourself up there. Like, it's not really about the aesthetic or like what you're wearing. It's really just about the music that you're playing and that you're getting people to dance, which I really I love that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, with like the pioneers, like the first generation of those, especially guys, like we all, you know, their look was important, and they had like a cultivated look, you know, like Skrillex is a perfect example, and they clearly did it for us to identify them, you know. But yeah, I'm happy to say that that doesn't really happen now so much. You know, we know people more from their sound than like their little.
Yeah, I mean, like in the more like serious like techno world, like how you dress
doesn't matter at all.
It's completely irrelevant.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you know, mass culture will inevitably dip in, and yeah. So it's important to kind of like be conscious about all of this, you know, and make like your boundaries clear to yourself.
Definitely.
And we do need many more women and game design and DJing and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is there are actually so many women that DJ. They just, like, I mean, even just now, like, paying a little more attention to what's going on in Europe, like, it's actually, like, there's a lot of really badass women.
That's good news.
I think we just don't hear about it in the US, but over there, it's very different. I mean, it's still male-dominated, but I think a lot of women are getting, like, more of a platform and getting a chance to play. So
it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Okay, great. So is there anything else that I haven't touched on?
I'd say that's all.
Like you're also a mother, or I don't know.
I have a box turtle.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I've had her for maybe 10 years now.
Wow, how long do they live?
She could live up to 50 years.
Oh, wow, that's a commitment.
Yeah, I probably have to have a will for her just in case she lives longer. I don't know.
What's her name?
Audrey.
Oh.
And she's very sweet. She's been hibernating, but she's just now pretty active again. But
Oh.
Yeah, she goes
even
into
in Miami, they hibernate?
Yeah, she did like a full brumation. I didn't see her for about almost 3 months now. So
wild. So it has very little to do with the weather. It has to do with the time of year.
It does actually, though, because I have her on my balcony, so she's responding to the weather. Like, so she feels the difference, like the temperature drop.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Oh. Yeah. Well, that's a nice family unit.
Yes.
Yeah. Lovely. Okay. Well, thank you for coming. I think all of this is fascinating, and it's something we haven't had an experience with on the podcast and the show. So very, very enriching. Thank you.
Yeah,
and
thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So this was Virgo, and she's DJing tonight. And just catch her wherever you find her. She's on Instagram. That's how we met.
Virgo.
Yeah, that's how we met. So, and thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with us every Friday from 2 to 4. I'm Eurydice, and until I come back next Friday, please keep smashing the patriarchy by speaking sex. Ciao. I'm so glad I got the turtle in. I was like super. I'm so glad I got the little turtle story in.
Oh, turtle.
I have a turtle like pendant.